So we're going to move on to finding help with your artistic vision. So this is about our funding programs. So we have several funding programs for organizations. Like I said, they're guided by our 10-year plan as well as our funding strategy priorities. We released our funding strategy and our investment framework last year. And I just want to reiterate that right now, these are the EAC's, four funding priorities. We want to see demonstrated commitment to the fair and professional payment of Edmonton artists and arts workers, effective pursuit of an organization's primary mandate, if that is to support, engage, produce, or present work by and for Indigenous communities and or equity-seeking groups. Not everyone will have that mandate. That's okay. But if that is your mandate, we want to see that you are pursuing that. Provision of accessible or low-cost programming to a wide range of Edmontonians, for example, by a free festival event or activity, and or the effective operational management of an Edmonton Arts facility or facilities that are accessible and available for the use of multiple artists, audiences, and communities. These are our current four funding priorities. That does not mean do them all. Okay, very rarely will any of you do them all. That means one. At the moment, most of our organizations that were assessed last year are hitting at least two of these. Okay, so we're not worried about it. At this point, this isn't something that should be of a concern to you if you're operating in the way that you say that you're operating, if you're pursuing your mandate. We're not asking for everybody to do everything. We're just trying to figure out some really strong categories to see where the work is being done in our community in these four ways. So not all, one of. We don't expect you to change what you're doing to hit another priority. I just want to be really, really clear about that. In that, we have a couple of programs for organizations. So you might find that the one we talk about today isn't a right fit, or you might find that you actually don't know about our other programs because you've just been, in this cycle of applying for the annual funding every year and you're not sure what else is out there. Because once again, we all have very limited capacity as arts administrators. I know that. So I just want to reiterate that we do have two project funding opportunities. They're called Connections and Exchanges Initiatives, which is kind of for new activity, new arts activity. Think about something that's innovative, something that might be risky for your regular programming. You're not sure if you want to bring it into your season or bring it into your regular things, but you want to try something new. Connections and Exchanges Initiatives is a great way to say, like, hey, I'd love to get a little bit of money to see how this goes before we add it to our operational budget year over year. And then we also have the Invent and Adapt program, which is more of that internal focus as opposed to an external focus, like doing some sort of arts activity. Internal focus on your organization's inner workings, strengthening your skills, your stability, looking at sustainability, looking at revenue generation and those pieces. Internal advancement, something that kind of gets you over that hump for your internal operations so that you can continue to do work in maybe a more developed or more mature way. So these are our two project funding programs that we have coming up in 2026. The dates for those will definitely be released by the beginning of January. And deadlines, Connections and Exchanges usually happens around the spring, but I don't have an official deadline on that yet. So check back, sign up for the newsletter, make sure that you give yourself the opportunity to hear about those programs. Today, we're going to focus on our annual organization funding, which is the other type of funding investment that we have for organizations right now. So this funding supports organizations that directly impact the Edmonton arts ecosystem through recurring arts and culture activities and work. I'm going to be really clear about a couple words that include Edmonton, recurring, arts and culture, activities, and work. We don't all do the same things, and that's okay, but those are the intersections that we all kind of want to hit. So we'll talk more in detail about that, but just making sure you're in the right place by looking at that framing for today's conversation. The general eligibility for this program is as follows. This is a restatement of the guidelines verbatim. I'm not going to read them all. They are in the guidelines exactly as this. The thing that I want to speak to is if you're not sure, if you're like, ooh, I think we meet all of this general eligibility, I don't really know, please just reach out. We're happy to have conversations with you about eligibility. It might not always be the answer that you want, but this is our general eligibility. I think one of the big highlights to notice is that we're saying that you need 1 year of completed financial statements. You'll notice that that's a little bit of a shift of previous years because we recognize that a lot of organizations have also been on pause. Okay, because of the pandemic and those kinds of things. So we're trying to be a little bit more understanding about maybe some of the irregular activities of the last few years. So 1 year completed financial statements, that means signed off by your board, this regular recurring arts activity, and this registered and governed as a non-for-profit. Now, if you run an organization that maybe has a different type of structure, your registration status might not fit into this box, please reach out. We are looking at ways to support other models, maybe not through this funding program, but maybe you're an organization, a cultural organization, and your leadership model is different. Please reach out. We'd love to talk to you. I'm always about the gray area in those conversations. So if you have questions, let's figure it out. And it might not be a right now, but it's probably not a hard no. So let's have that conversation instead of never starting it. General funding eligibility. What is not supported? If you already receive operational funding from the City of Edmonton or another partner of the City of Edmonton, we cannot extend this funding opportunity to you. There is even a direct question in the application this year to make sure that that is clear to everybody. You need to have activity for arts and culture. We are the Edmonton Arts Council. That's a real thing. We cannot fund organizations that have a focus on education, religious outcomes, competitions, demonstrations, capital construction or development, or fundraising. That's not what your primary focus needs to be. Organizations in arrears with the City of Edmonton. So that's a conversation we would have kind of after assessment process. And organizations with overdue Edmonton Arts Council reports. I want to be clear, a submitted report is not an overdue report. So if you'd submitted, we know we have a backlog of reports. We know some of you have reached out to us. If you've submitted, you are not overdue, you're fine. If your project hasn't finished, you're also not overdue, you're fine. Now, if your project maybe should have finished and you need a timeline extension, please email us at, I saw somebody move their mouth, grants, grants@edmontonarts.ca, and ask for a project extension. So maybe you have something and the timeline shifted. That happens all the time. Just send us an email and we'll make sure that we can update your reporting framework so that you don't appear to be overdue when in actuality your project is still occurring. I see some questions in the chat, so I'm just going to take a quick pause. Municipal funding referred to Edmonton. Correct. Municipal funding in Edmonton. So if you are a provincial organization and you receive funding from other municipalities, that's not a conflict. Just because our pool of funding comes from the City of Edmonton. So we have to look at the other funding bodies in the City of Edmonton. That's a great question. If you're funded by other municipalities, that's totally fine. The municipality of Edmonton. I can go in and check the wording on the application as well to make sure that that's very, very clear. I'm just going to make myself a note. Hopefully I can recognize that scribble later and know what it's about. But thank you for the question. Yes, municipal funding in Edmonton. Thanks everyone for the questions. I'm going to try to make sure that I'm on the chat a little bit better as well. We also have the delineation between operating and programming. So something you're going to notice that's a little different this year in 2026 is that we're not asking you to choose this for yourself or fill out a separate application. We have two streams of funding in our annual funding. So that annual recurring arts activity, we have operating organizations and programming organizations. If you are considered operating, you have a primary mandate focused on the arts, and you have a significant portion of activity in Edmonton proper, not Greater Edmonton, Edmonton proper. And then your funding amount is related to your entire operational budget. If you're a programming organization, you undertake specific arts and culture-based activity, but that's being around. I knew that was going to happen today. All good. It's just a test. I heard it on the radio this morning. If you're in programming, you undertake specific arts and culture-based activity, but that is not your primary mandate. Okay, but you do recurring arts and culture things annually, year over year, the same things, but you don't have necessarily an arts and culture mandate. And And your funding amount is related to the expenses for that arts and culture activity, not your entire operational budget. That's the delineation there. If you're wondering about multi-year support, as you know, our multi-year program was on hold. We did a trial. It was the first 3 years, 22, 23, 24 were the first years that we did multi-year support. We're reevaluating the program. So we were on pause last year. For this year, only organizations that received multi-year support in 2022 will be considered for multi-year. And even in that, I'm going to say considered very, very loosely. As many of you know, we're going into a funding cycle with the City of Edmonton this fall. So we may not be able to extend multi-year support depending on the outcomes of that cycle. So we're kind of in that gray area right now. So those would be the only organizations considered, and it is depending a little bit on our relationship with the City of Edmonton. If you have specific questions about that, feel free to reach out and we can talk about your specific situation. I don't want anybody to talk necessarily specifically about their position on that. But we can definitely have those conversations in a one-on-one at another time. Oh, did I miss a question? I apologize. Let me see if I can go back. Graham says, I missed a question. Can somebody help me find the one that I missed? I apologize, everyone. Or did I catch them all?
It was just Grove City Chorus's question. They asked who are the partners
Oh,
for
partners on
City of
partners on
Edmonton.
Oh, City of Edmonton. So the City of Edmonton has 10 partners. I'm not going to list them all, but that would include the Edmonton Heritage Council, ourselves. Sometimes Explore Edmonton does certain funding. So there's 10 municipal partners in the City of Edmonton. If you did receive operational funding from any of them, you would know. So it's likely that that's not an issue for your organization. If you do have a specific question about that, feel free to reach out and we can look into your specific case. Yeah, great question. Sorry about that. And thank you also for reiterating that question in the chat. As a reminder for this program, the deadline is December 15th at noon.